Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you once again. Thank you, Stacy, for the warm introduction. As Stacy said, my name is Natasha Flood, and I am the director of the ESSA and Title I department here in Prince George's County Public Schools. Once again, good afternoon and welcome to our very first Empowerment Unleashed panel showcase and unconference. We are thrilled to have you join with us today in this vital platform as we embark upon a new journey to explore and empower teachers like yourself to help students take ownership of their learning during extended learning opportunities. We do have a technology team in the ESSA Title I department, Dr. Terry Jefferson, our instructional technology specialist, Ms. Nancy Benning, our technology resource teacher, and our host for this event, Ms. Stacy Montgomery, another technology resource teacher. So again, please be in the present, be in the now, as we work together in collaborating on powerful ideas and strategies that we can bring back as we prepare for our extended learning opportunity programs this school year for the 23-24 school year. Stacy, I turn it back to you.
Thank you, Natasha. We appreciate your introduction. Now, before we dive into our expert panel showcase for this wonderful event, as well as our unconference, it's my pleasure to be able to highlight the full agenda with you today. Today, we're going to get started with some background information, and then we'll ask you to join us for a short celebration. And next, we'll move into our expert panel showcase to receive helpful information. And then the second half of our time together will be an opportunity for you to ask questions as well as brainstorm and share your thoughts during our virtual unconference and collaboration. Then we'll close our event with a short form asking for you to provide your feedback and evaluation. I'd like to give you all a chance to go to the sign-in sheet. If you have your telephone, please feel free to use the QR code to scan and sign in. Additionally, there's a tiny URL at the bottom of the screen, and we'd like to ask if you could please sign in, and we'll take about 30 seconds for that.
I'd like to welcome everyone to our Empowerment Unleashed. We're excited to have our educators, administrators, and thought leaders from all over the county today gather here to discuss these vital topics of empowering our students with their with data ownership for their technology journeys.
Did you know that November is our data month? And this month we will be celebrating the power of data in education. So to kick off things, we started November 1st with the release of our data empowerment calendar for teachers. And this calendar serves as a valuable resource for educators, providing a structured guide to integrating data-driven activities and strategies into the teaching routines. So I hope you got it, and I hope you guys are using it.
Now, as a part of our data month, please remember to mark your calendar for 2 upcoming releases. On November 20th, we'll be releasing the Data Empowerment Insights newsletter to extend today's discussion from the panel.
And then in November, on the 29th, get ready for our Data in the Classroom Teacher Showcase. We are inspiring educators to integrate their data practices. We are going to be highlighting your work and really getting an opportunity to see what you're doing out there in the classroom and in the schools.
Okay, so before we move on, let's take a moment to congratulate our Title I Prince George's County schools that were recognized with the 50 most improved schools. So out of that, we had 24% of the schools were Title I schools right here in Prince George's County. These schools were, so we're going to applaud growths like Robert Gray is leading the way with 50% of the growth. So thank you. Congratulations, Robert Gray. Doswell Brooks also had 41% growth. Columbia Park had 33.8% growth. Highland Park had 32% growth. Nicholas Orem had 29.2% growth. Suitland had 28% growth. Ridgecrest Elementary School had 27.7% growth. Beacon Heights had 27.7% growth. And Clinton Grove had 26.6% growth. And this is growth in English proficiency. Now, for our math schools, we had 3 schools that were on the list as Maryland's 50 most improved schools in math proficiency, and they were Beacon Heights Elementary School, Doswell Brooks, and Forest Heights. So congratulations to those schools.
Now, without further ado, let's move into our expert panel showcase and information section of our time together. Today, we're going to be focusing on various aspects of data and student ownership. With us today, we have Dr. Johnson from our special education department. We will have the soon-to-be Dr. Bowers from our testing, research, and evaluation office. We have Kimberly Roberson from our technology, integration, and support team, as well as Dr. Canny from our English language development office. And we will have with us later on Janita Nelson, Generette from the elementary mathematics team, as well as our very own Chandra Brown from the ESSA and Title I department. To get us started, let's begin by visiting with Ms. Camille Johnson. Dr. Camille Johnson, did you make it to the line this afternoon?
I am here. Good afternoon. And you were actually correct. While I thank you for the honor in giving me and conferring that degree upon me yet, I have not yet arrived. Miss Camille Johnson, but I'll take it as a prophetic word from your mouth, somebody's ears, that that's where I'm headed. But it is, have not quite earned that yet. So for those of my colleagues that have, I want to be able to acknowledge and celebrate that. But thank you so much, Montgomery, and to Jefferson and to the entitled Title I team. I appreciate the few minutes that were given today. We had an interesting conversation just a week ago, and to be here to talk about, particularly as it relates to students with disabilities. And when asked, what should ELO coordinators be aware for planning for when you're including that? First thing that I said to them was that please plan with your students with disabilities in mind, that they are the number one persons of our students that need to be included and a part of your ELO. And so it is so critically important to look at our students, to look beyond their disability and to really begin to see, sometimes it's hard to think how I can move a student with a disability, especially when I'm so significantly below grade level. But one of the things that we will look, if you drill down and we begin to look at the data, and Jamie coming behind me to talk about, when we look at student data, we look at them not terms of, don't look at a student with disability as just a student who you're trying to move to proficiency, because that becomes a daunting task. That becomes challenging when you're having. But if you look at in the minds of those schools that we have celebrated, they were celebrated not because every one of those students were proficient, but every one of those students made growth. And so that is the key and the important thing for understanding for our students is, can I move you from a 0.5 to a 1? Can I move you from a 1 to a 1? Can I move you from a 1 to a 2? And that is always the intentional. I may not make it to grade level, but can the work and the intentionality that you take in addressing the needs of students with disabilities, whether it's in reading or mathematics, is the growth, because that's what we want to show with our students, that they are making growth. And that's where our data will get richer. That's where you'll make the difference. That's where you'll change the trajectory for a child with a disability. Not whether or not they can make proficiency, but can they make growth? And if you focus on making student growth for them, you'll become to see changes and put those addressed. So I can answer any of those questions, but I hope you think of that in mind. Don't want to go beyond my time that was allocated, but really want us to be intentional. Please don't leave them out because you think they're too far from proficiency, but see beyond their disability, see their needs, and plan with them in mind. And you'll begin to see the gaps that can be built. So thank you, and you all have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you so very much for your time and those wonderful words. Next, we'll have an opportunity to hear from Jamie Bowers from Testing, Research, and Evaluation. Jamie?
Sure. So I have a couple things to speak for the bullets that are there. One of the things I want to speak about are how teachers are monitoring data. So right now, we have several schools that are using progress monitor templates to build data stories for their schools. Our office is privileged to get to go out and work with some of those schools that ask for support and looking some of those progress monitor tools and things that they are using to build. Most of these are created at the school level based on their specific needs and their school performance plan or their CSI plan, or they're looking at their TSI designation, things like that. And then data from their elementary, middle, and high school mathematics and their science and their reading curriculum data that's also embedded into Pearson Access, iReady, Dibbles are included in these monitoring tools. Many schools, when we've been out to visit, we were just able to visit a few schools during the MSDE data-driven meetings. You usually have bi-weekly data meetings where these different progress monitor tools are discussed, but that's usually on a school-by-school basis. Several schools also meet departmentally to review benchmark summary data, and I'll talk about a few examples of that in a minute, and identify departmental or content instructional goals. And some of our schools are actually using our benchmark, our common assessment, our milestone tasks to work with students to develop school and student independent goals. So working with students and ensuring students are dialoguing in the classroom and looking at their data and developing their own independent goals. And some of the school goals and their classroom goals are disaggregated by student groups looking at multilingual learners or students with disabilities. And then some schools also have teachers looking at student work through the Pearson Access platform, looking at the item analysis reports that are present in there, where they can identify common misconceptions, look at different item types that students are struggling with, high and low performing standards, and they also use the Pearson Access platform to identify student exemplar examples, use student actual responses, and identify how to help students improve their understanding and responses. And I don't know if Janida has joined, but I wanted to highlight Janida because I had been following her on Twitter, and Janida does a great job of dedicating time to benchmark one scoring. They have MCAP holistic scoring rubric for modeling and reasoning that also kind of benefits our teachers when they're hand scoring their benchmark assessments. So I wanted to give a shout out to Janida and her team for doing some of those holistic scoring opportunities for her K-5 math teachers. And then tomorrow, Dr. Dyson is holding a data clinic, a data workshop for middle school math teachers and working with them and looking at specific data targets and looking at some of those hand score items from common assessments and benchmarks and how to make data-driven decisions. So our teachers, I think, are getting really good feedback and really good examples from our content office and how to monitor that data. So in Pearson Access, there are many, many tools, reports, and things that you can pull, but the ones that we hear most commonly used, more often used to help plan instruction, are when you drill into reports and you're looking at your item analysis and your standards analysis are the ones that are going to really help tailor differentiated instruction and differentiated grouping for students, as well as help students write independent learning goals, looking at some of the items and link to the standards that they're having challenges with.
Only, front door, walkers, and car riders.
So one of the other things I wanted to share really quickly is I wanted to shout out 3 schools that I visited. Edward Fellogy is doing a great job in looking at their data. And I wanted to, I don't know, Stacy, if I can share my screen. If not, I'll just look at the 3 things that I pulled. One of the things that Edward Fellogy did a really good job of, they looked at their instructional schedule and they made some schedule shifts. And one of the things that I wanted to highlight is they went from using a 45-minute collaborative planning block weekly for looking at data to increasing that to a 90-minute collaborative block weekly to look at data. So they are really using their schedule wisely and looking at offering more time for collaborative planning and teachers being able to work together with their students with disability partners and their multilingual learner partners and looking at that data. Another school that I want to highlight is Hyattsville Elementary School. I noticed that they have a really strong vision statement and they have really good goals that are tied to looking at specific data. And I wanted to highlight them because they are looking at weekly, they have a tracker system they're looking at and really monitoring that data very carefully when they are meeting. And then the last school I wanted to shout out was Robert Gray Elementary School. When I looked at some of their data resources, I noticed that they had identified some really big challenges and some shifts at their school. And they had noticed that data literacy was one of the things that they were focusing on, and they had talked about some intentional focus on learning environments, cooperative groups, and real-world examples using data from our Pearson Access platform and other platforms to help inform some of these challenges that they are hoping to shift into a more positive light in their school. I think that's pretty much it for mine. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. I appreciate all of that information. And if there's anything like a template or other resources that we could possibly share after our event today, Jamie, we would love to be able to include that possibly in our newsletter, because we do appreciate you taking the time to curate those items for us. And thank you again. Next, we're going to have a short visit by Kimberly Robeson, who's going to come and share some resources that will help us in preparing for our ELOs.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kim Robertson. As Stacy mentioned, I'm the Director of Technology Integration and Support, which essentially is made up of 3 teams, T3, the IT Service Desk, as well as Technology Support Services. And we're fortunate in that in Prince George's County, our students and teachers have a wealth of technology resources that can be used to support them instructionally. There are additional tutoring applications and interventions that are specific to the needs of the users. You are likely familiar, hopefully, with the T3 website that includes the approved district resources that exist in our district for engagement, as well as for student learning, whether it's for a teacher to use it for a presentation resource or for students to engage and share the ways that they know. We encourage you to select any digital tool, intervention, or application that best meets the needs of the learners. Even though we have it, does not mean that we have to use it for everyone and for every situation. Some of the things that we have district level access for are Canvas. As you know, this year our secondary students are using Canvas as a learning management system to curate the resources that their teachers provide. In addition to Canvas, it can hold other additional resources such as Nearpod, Edpuzzle, Book Creator, Pear Deck, or Lumio. Depending on the school that you're in, you likely may have access to a new smart board. If not a smart board, you may have access to a ViewSonic or a Boxlight board, which are supported within our district. Our website, or the T3 website, holds access to all of these digital tools, which is bit.ly/T3 PGCPS. In addition to that, you may know that our students, we would love for our students to use Clever to access the tutoring applications and/or interventions or digital resources that are provided to them. Clever is used as a way to mask or keep our student data private so that we do not share that data with third parties. So we encourage you always to go back to that resource in Clever to be able to access our digital tools. And now, because we have so many things, how do you learn about them? There are regular training sessions that take place. Again, from the T3 website, you can see where those are located. Regular training sessions that take place after school for teachers. We also have some sessions during the day for operational staff who may need some additional assistance with those. And if you're not able to make it, most of the sessions that are hosted are recorded. So there are recorded webinars on that page as well. And then if for whatever reason you just can't find what you're looking for, I always encourage you, there's a magnifying glass at the top of our website that you can always click on and use that to search to locate whatever resource you're looking for. And if all else fails you, feel free to reach out to our IT service desk who can point you in the right direction and or provide a ticket if something is not working. I will say, in order to get to the resources, you need to make sure that your student has a functioning Chromebook, that their password works. So in addition to the T3 website that I mentioned, we also have for our technology team that might exist in the building, we have a separate website just for them that gives them help and support on how to change a password if needed. It gives them support on how to get the Chromebooks repaired if those are things that are needed. I did prepare a presentation for you that I'm dropping the link to in chat, but I know it will be available to you at a later time when the ESSA Title I team shares their newsletter. So feel free to go back and look at that resource because it encapsulates all the things that I just mentioned to you in this brief overview. But thank you.
Thank you so much, Kimberly. We appreciate your wonderful information that you were able to share with our ELO coordinators. And ELO coordinators, as you're joining, if you were just joining us today, this event will be recorded, so you will be able to catch any of the information that you may have missed previously. But now we're going to invite our supervisor of English Language Development Office, Dr. Kenny.
Good afternoon, everybody. I just want to share a little bit with you about how you can support our multilingual learners in your ELOs. And I want to reiterate what Ms. Johnson shared in that the multilingual learner population is a population that you want to make sure that you include in your ELOs. And if you have a RELA, a reading or a math ELO, don't exclude our multilingual learners because of their data, but just make sure that you incorporate the strategies they need to access the actual ELO. Just before I get started and get into a little bit of our resources, in case you don't know, we did change our name. We used to be the ESA office. We are now the English Language Development or ELD office. And you hear me saying multilingual learners. We're no longer referring to our students as multilingual learners, just so you're aware. So when you're considering which multilingual learners, and almost Dr. Bowers, Jamie spoke about data, thinking about our multilingual learners and also looking at their access scores and seeing where they might have gaps and using that data to help to push in what offerings you offer in your ELOs. You can also look at how our multilingual learners performed on their content benchmarks as well. When you're thinking about integrating strategies, make sure that you reach out to your ELD teacher and ask them how the key ELD strategies, there are 7 of them, could be integrated into the instruction that's provided within the ELO. And when you get the actual slideshow, you'll be able to see if you don't know what those 7 strategies are. And then at each school, at elementary, we have platforms that are available that can be used supplementally with our multilingual learners in your ELO. For K and 1, we have Joy School English, which helps with building students' oral language. Our ELD teachers also have access to Learning A to Z and can make sure that their multilingual learners are assigned to a RAS account, as well as across K-12, we have access to BrainPop, and BrainPop Junior is available at elementary, and then BrainPop ELL is available at middle and high school. In middle school, one of the other programs that is very helpful is Speak Agent, which is available for math and science for all students, not just our multilingual learners, and really helps to build that academic language. And then if you have our newcomers, if you're doing a program and you want to also help to build their language, you can help them work with Rosetta Stone. And we are trying out iLit at 2 middle schools. So if we see how it's working, we'll make sure we let Title I know to help advance our multilingual learners. And then at high school, we do also have Speak Agent for our math when we're looking at our applications in algebra, and as well as our Rosetta Stone. And so as you're thinking about developing your programs and how you can support our multilingual learners, also consider those programs and making sure you incorporate our key ELD strategies. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Canny. And now what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick jump to our supervisor here. Let's go one more slide, Terry. We're going to go to Chandra Brown, who is our coordinating supervisor here in the SN Title I department, and she's going to describe one section of the analysis of the successfulness or the effectiveness of our ELO. And Chandra, are you available at this time?
Yes. Hi, Stacy. Thank you very much.
Good
afternoon, everyone. So when we talk about how we can get evidence for student ownership and the use of data, it's first important that we have frequent skill assessments throughout our ELO so we can identify those misconceptions that our students are having, so we can have those conversations about what it is that they may need assistance with, and we can have those real data discussions with our students in order to help them take ownership. In order to have ownership, they need to know what it is that they need help with. And so it's important that although when we look at our ELO profiles and when we ask for specific things for our ELO, we only really ask for a pre and post test, but to stop after skills have been taught to do quick skill assessments to see what it is our students still need assistance with, then you can have those conversations and show them either one by one. That's the great thing about an ELO, is that it's a small number of students. And so while the other students are engaged in something else, you can have these data discussions with your students one-on-one or two-on-one so that they can understand their data and know exactly what it is that they need to work on. That's basically the biggest takeaway, I think, that I have had in terms of ensuring that students take some ownership of their data. Again, they can't take ownership if they don't know their data. So please share the data with the students. Also, as we're looking, one of the requirements for having a Title I ELO is to ensure that at the end of the program, you're really looking to see if the ELO was effective. Did it yield the outcome in which you were expecting? Did the students make growth? I've heard that throughout today's presentations and panelists. We want to look at student growth. So each ELO coordinator has a coordinator workbook with a Title I ELO, and on the last tab, we've provided some reflection questions that you and your ELO team should be looking at the end, or you can even do some midway to make sure there's not to make sure there are no opportunities for course correcting. And so basically, it's what data are we using to determine the effectiveness? So it's very important that you have a clear understanding of the data that you're using to select your students, the data that you are using throughout your program, and then how does that look at the end? Did we meet our expectations? Did we see the growth we were expecting? And then how did you measure that growth? For some students, growth looks differently. So it might not be whether or not everybody made a 10-point or 10 percentage point growth. It could be what was the expectation for this student and the growth. And then whether the growth is sustainable. Because once they leave the ELO, are they still showing signs of that growth in their regular classroom during the day? The other thing that we've noticed that it's very important to do an analysis of attendance, because sometimes the reason our students are not making the growth that we want to see is because they're not attending the ELO regularly. So it's important to see, did we have an attendance problem? If so, how did we try to correct it? How did we try to support our students in ensuring? Or even in the planning, did we plan an ELO program that our students can get to? Can they get to our ELO if it's held on a Saturday? Can they stay after school if we don't have transportation? Can their parents get them there? So that'll give us a conversation, or the school team can have a conversation after the analysis of the attendance. And then lastly, based on all of these data points, the skill assessment, pre to post, attendance, and any other data sources that you have, you would then say what changes have to be made. What we don't want to do is continue to do the
I don't think she
same thing
needs.
over and over again if it's not working. So it's very important to do a really deep reflection, a data analysis, drill down to the data in order to determine whether or not your ELO was effective. And if it didn't yield the expectations, how can we change it to better meet the needs of our students? Thank you.
Thank you, Chandra. We really appreciate the insights that you've provided. And for those of you who are joining us today, you will have an opportunity to go into one of our breakout rooms to talk a little bit more about Title I's support for your development, your planning, your implementation, as well as the monitoring and evaluation of your ELO. But before we move into that portion, I'd like to welcome Janida Nelson Jenneret. We also just wanted to let everyone know there was a meeting going on today. And so we thank Janida for taking a moment out of her busy schedule to join us today. If you can unmute yourself, we're going to go to our math department so that we can hear a little bit about how the math department's purchases can be used during ELOs, as well as how students can monitor their learning, and then recommendations as it relates to the use of sanction interventions versus supplemental resources, and a little bit about the 4 R's of integrating that into the ELOs. Janida, are you able to hear us?
Yes. Can you all hear me?
Yes, wonderful. Thank you so much for taking time out and joining us today. We appreciate you.
Problem. Hello, everyone. I am gonna just talk briefly about these 4 bullets, mainly because we do want to allow schools to have some autonomy because you know your students best. But I will share what the district purchased for all schools to serve as a tier 2 intervention, and that is do the math. And many of you have probably seen the big box kits of materials from Heinemann. It's the publisher. Do the Math is a print resource. There are materials that consist of a teacher bookcase that shows and provides the resources and the scripted lessons for teachers to use. There are student workspaces, which are basically the student workbooks. And there's also manipulative kits that go with each of the different modules. The modules aren't grade specific, they're more topic specific. So in the buildings, you'll have a kit for number core, which is, I don't want to say basic number sense, but typically just getting students to recognize making 10 and using different 10 frames and just really developing that number sense. We have an addition and subtraction module. Within that module, there are 3 levels, level A, level B, level C, and that strictly supports students with adding and subtracting. Starts off with single digit numbers, then we build on, and then towards the end, they're adding and subtracting, I think up to 3-digit numbers with and without regrouping. We have a multiplication module, and again, that module has section A, section B, and C, and each of those modules within the multiplication kit have, it progresses. So we'll start off with simple multiplication facts, then we progress into multiplying by 10, and then multiplying multi-digit numbers. And then we have division, again, A, B, C. A is the lowest, and then it builds up. And then our last module that all schools have is the fractions module. And again, there's an A, B, and C. In each of those modules, there's a pre-test, and then there's a post-test. The pre-test, of course, is given at the beginning, and there's a pre-test for addition and subtraction A, a post-test for addition and subtraction A, and then so forth. There's a B, and a C. And then there's a progress monitoring assessment within each of those modules that happens in the middle of the module around the 5th lesson to just track progress. All of those resources are print. We have a folder with all of the print assessments. I'm stressing print because at this time, the digital component is not working the way we like. It's in the SAMs. However, you don't have to use the digital program to still use the intervention effectively with the students. And that's the district purchased Tier 2 intervention. We've also purchased Dreambox as a resource, a supplemental resource. I would not use that as an ELO unless it's for extra practice at the end, if there's some extra time. But I would use the interventions instead of the supplemental resources, particularly if you are focusing on students that are having challenges with the prescribed curriculum. Before I move on, are there any questions about Do the Math? Are many of you using that in your ELO program? Just curious. Just use your reactions or in the chat. Okay. Okay. I see a question about the assessments. If you send me an email, actually, I'll just put the link for the assessments in the chat before I leave. We do also have the approved interventions document, the sanctioned intervention document, and then any of those sanctioned interventions would be appropriate, but just note that our office purchased Do the Math for the entire district. All right. How can students monitor their learning? We don't have, I don't know if this is a question regarding an ELO, monitoring their learning through an ELO, or just in general.
And we can speak specific to the ELO because when it comes down to learning, this group right here would be the ELO coordinators. So if you'd like to share a little bit more about how the students can monitor their learning during ELOs, that would be a great place to start. Thank you.
I think the most efficient and what's working, because like I said, our digital component isn't working for do the math. So that would be an option if it worked. But just that constant feedback and then giving students their work back and just here's where you started on your pretest. Have the students create a goal. If they, I'm just making numbers up. If I had 4 out of 10, let's make our goal 7 out of 10. And just really talking to the students regarding their pre and post test data. And then there's 10 lessons within each module and just having those conversations with the students. We'd like the groups to be small during an ELO so you can have that interaction in those student conferences. Dreambox has an element if you're using Dreambox as a supplemental resource, like some time in between, like transition time, and the students can also log in and see how they're performing in Dreambox as well. I think I did get, well, I'll come back to the third bullet in regards to interventions versus supplemental resources. The interventions truly support, oh, I'm sorry, somebody's coming off mute. Go ahead.
No, I appreciate you sharing. Can you clarify for the teachers that are on the line, because many of the team members that are on may have heard the term sanctioned interventions versus supplemental resources. Can you clarify the difference between the two and how that looks in instruction?
So the sanctioned intervention is specifically used to support students who need additional instruction beyond the prescribed curriculum. And they're sanctioned interventions because there's research that shows that it's an impactful resource to serve as either a tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3 intervention. A supplemental resource is a resource that isn't necessarily, I won't say necessarily, it's not for supporting students who may have gaps. It supplements the resources that are currently being used, and all students can access supplemental resources. Typically, our interventions are specifically for those students that need additional support beyond the prescribed curriculum.
And so I guess we can end by hearing about the 4 R's and possibly integrating any of those R's into our ELO.
Absolutely. I think the 4 R's, should I add that? Is that document in the agenda?
No,
Just
it
in
isn't.
case.
We're going to, and just to let you know, we're going to share a resource document after the presentation. It's going to be a newsletter. And so we will share
Okay.
the document about the 4 R's. But if you'd like to share that in the chat right now, that would be absolutely wonderful. Thank you.
I can definitely put that in the chat. I did put the folder for the resource, the assessments for Do the Math. So the 4 R's, it's a process to support students, and it's driven by data. And I think the ELO is a perfect opportunity to practice those, not practice, but implement those 4 R's. Particularly, I'll just go into what the 4 R's stand for. Review, and that's an opportunity for students to routinely review concepts and skills that they've already been taught. And I think an extended learning opportunity is a good strategy, a good time to implement that strategy to support students with what they're learning in class. Revisit, that's an opportunity to come back to skills that were taught in math, in particular, the math curriculum, because there's new content from September to June. The curriculum doesn't spiral those concepts, they build and they grow. Unlike reading where it's repeated each quarter, math, it's new content from September to June. The ELO is a good opportunity using data to go back and revisit skills from previous quarters and just using the data to determine, you know what, I know we're in fractions for this unit, but based on our data, I need to go back and have students revisit multiplication. So an ELO is a good opportunity for that. Re-engage is an opportunity. We say re-engage versus reteach, particularly at elementary, because if we reteach something the same way we taught it before, we're more than likely going to have the same results we had when we taught it the first time. So re-engaging is being able to bring the content back to students, but engage them in a different way in order for them to understand the concepts. And then revise, that's an opportunity for students to get their work back, and based on the descriptive feedback that the teacher has provided, going back and revising their work and making corrections. And then really supporting the students, not just with, yeah, I got this wrong, but what did I do wrong? And then what can I do to improve? And those 4 R's are the opportunity for students to become more proficient with the grade level content that's in front of them during instruction. And I'm going to put the 4 R's document in the chat. And are there any questions about the 4 R's? I really think there's a great opportunity during an ELO to do review and revisit and re-engage, but also knowing that it's based on student data and not just something, oh, I think I'm going to do this. No, let's look at the data and see what the students need.
And to provide a little wait time, just to let you know, if you don't have any questions at this time, there will be an opportunity for you to ask a few additional questions and engage in additional conversations in just a moment. So if any of those things came to you as, if anything that you heard today has sparked an interest, if you have a wondering, or if you've been successfully implementing anything, we're going to get an opportunity to share those ideas with one another. But before I do that, I just want to make sure, Janita, did you have anything else that you want to share before we move to the next section?
I don't. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you so much. So each one of you that has taken the time to join us today, please know that this has been designed specifically with you in mind. This has been a panel showcase. We've had a chance to hear from leaders throughout our district who have a lot of resources. They are a wealth of information, and they're here today to talk directly to you as you're planning your actual ELOs. Now, many of you have already started the planning process, but now you may be in the implementation phase of your ELO. So as you're implementing, if you heard some additional thoughts or ideas that may be able to assist you, please reach out to to these individuals, because we're getting ready to go into breakout rooms. Additionally, as you're going back and monitoring and you're looking at the evaluation stage of your ELO, please again reach out to these leaders that are on here. We don't want to close this time together without you having an opportunity to ask questions as well as to share your ideas. So here's what we're going to do now. For the remaining time, this event ends at 4:30. So this time is now all about you. This is all about you. So what I'd like for everyone to do is please note that you will get an opportunity to share in what is called a Padlet. And what you're going to do is you're going to click the link for the Padlet, and then there are going to be categories of questions. I want you to think about your success stories as well as your wonderings. And as you're thinking about your success stories and wonderings, what I would like for you to do is then I would like for you to be able to type your responses in the document.